It is World Diabetes Day, and over 10 million Nigerians are living with diabetes, and we know it kills more than COVID-19 and even the cancer. I am Stella Elisha Dasham, your host, and my co-host is Rachel Tansy. Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning,
How you doing? How was the weekend?
Just fine. How was yours?
Great, thank you so much. Yes, viewers, we're live on Facebook and also on YouTube, so you can do well to drop your contribution and also your comment concerning any of the story that's of interest to you on the papers this morning. And we'll be starting with the first paper, and Rachel will be taking us down.
On Nigerian Tribune, Dixon, Abati, Omotoso, and Bello, others became fellow Nigerian Guild of Editors. Afenifere, F. Ohaneze, Indibo raised alarm over rising tension, violence, and hate speech, and you can read that on page 2. Money can't guarantee victory as INEC boss Jega tells politicians. Nigeria must work for all Nigerians. This is coming from Peter Obi, and you can read that on page 25. Olani Pekumba's governors over clamor for state police. And the big story on Nigerian Tribune still on $460,000 for future. Tinubu not eligible to contest, says the PDP, and the writer says section 137, subsection 1, subsection D of the 1999 Constitution renders him ineligible. Party says may go to court. You must respond to allegation Atiku and Okowa campaign challenges APC presidential candidate. PDP should stop dreaming. Tinubu won't withdraw from race. APC campaign office replies. Still on Nigerian Tribune, fake INEC statement on Tinubu. APC seeks police investigation. NDLEA arrest alleged drug baron. Woman linked to Pakistani cocaine syndicate. No definite resumption date on Abuja-Kaduna rail service. This is coming from the NRC. And on the downside of the paper, ASU set for nationwide protests over no work, no pay policy. You can read that on page 4. And on the Nigerian Tribune, there is a picture story where you can see the former central bank governor, Sanusi, and then the current CBN governor, that's Mr. Godwin Emefiele. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On the Blueprint newspaper, we have troops rebel terrorist attack on Kaduna communities. The writer says killed to recover arms and motorcycles. That you can find on page 6 of the Blueprint newspaper. The big story, which is on 2023, don't lead us into genocide. ACF warns politicians, said hate speech raising tension nationwide. Tinubu accuses rivals as the mastermind of INEC statement, urges police probe, and then caution Shetima on foul language, Obi tells the APC. And then we have Atiku move to reconcile with Wike-led G5. Too late. This is coming from the VONDG. Other stories still on the Blueprint. We have ex-England boss officials demanded half my salary to lead the Super Eagles to 2010 World Cup. You can read more of that also on the paper. And we have other stories here that said Osinbajo seek more investment in universities and others. Eni and Shell, Italian and court turns down Nigerians' $1 billion compensation request. Federal government secures $170 million loan from French agency to tackle the FCT power supply. NPAN stakeholders meet in Lagos on media framework today. And we have Finch downgrades Nigeria rating over debt services costs and others. And I think the story that actually caught my attention on the Blueprint is a big story, which was on the other paper too, where we see that talking about, would I say, hate languages coming from these political parties, especially the present ruling party and also the opposition party. And, you know, people have said if this was coming, because it looks from the way things are coming, we remember there were guidelines, there were rules that were given, use of languages and all of that. But then it looked as if most of the time, in Nigeria, when rules are being set, it's been set for the common man or for the poor, because most of the time the elites do cannot obey these rules that have been set. And I wonder why I'm expecting at a time like this that the INEC will call both parties, you know, caution them to also caution their members to be very careful of the language they speak. We have been talking about hate speech, but we can see this going on, even though we'll say that yes, it's in the spirit of the, you know, politics, but then in the midst of that politics don't run themselves, people run this party. So I believe that they should be called to order to be very careful of their languages. And if you really have something to say, attend this debate that have been said by most, you know, media stations that have been said. Just I think we had that of the Arise TV. Just yesterday we had another coming from, I think, China's TV or so, where we saw only Kwankwaso was present during this, you know, town hall meetings. And if you have something to say to Nigerians, I think that is the better platform. Come out and tell us what you have for Nigerians, rather than, you know, lashing each other. APC will say this, PDP should say this. Yes, it's in the spirit of politics, but I think this is the time they should be called to caution, do the right thing. There are right ways to do things. Channel your energy toward doing the right thing for Nigerians at the end of the day.
And you know, I think the mistake INEC made was, if they really had wanted this to be something really serious, a warning is not good enough. Just telling somebody don't do this is not good enough. Why didn't they put in penalties or sanction for such hate speeches?
There were penalties,
but I
think the problem here will be, we need a body that's supposed to follow up.
Exactly, they should follow up. Yes, when you put those sanctions or penalty or just sanctions and penalty for things like this, you should follow up. This person made this hate speech, the punishment should follow. Don't just keep every day in the paper we are saying INEC are warning, INEC. No. If someone has said a hate speech, then what was the penalty? What was the punishment you set for something like that? But you're not doing anything about it. You just keep warning, and your warning is not doing any good. Your warning is not stopping them from saying the hateful things they want to say. Your warning is not stopping them from tarnishing anybody's image. It's not doing anything. So what are the penalties you've put for these people when they say something hateful? Then follow up with it. Enough with the warning. Just do what you said is the punishment for hate speech.
Of course, Rachel. So look forward to the INEC and also the security body to do something concerning all of this. And that's all on the Blueprint newspaper.
On the Guardian newspaper, sponsoring fake news won't win election, says APC PCC. Udogan declares support for Okowa, seeks unity in PDP. Failings of the National Assembly. Most Nigerian roads are expired, says FEMA. And you can find that on page 9. And the big story, over 10 million Nigerians have diabetes, kills more than COVID-19 and cancer. The writer says condition, major cause of blindness, kidney failure, heart attack, stroke, lower limb amputation, says EMSOM. And then Fasan made, there are only 150 endocrinologists to over 220 million Nigerians. Physical exercise restores brain insulin sensitivity, may protect against type 2 diabetes. Stakeholders seek clarity on implementation of sugar tax. And Sele, before we move to the other stories, something captured my attention. It's already sad that we have only 150 endocrinologists to over 220 million. It's not surprising. We remember we just have one doctor to 10,000 patients in Nigeria. So this report is not that surprising to me. But the exciting part about this report and news is that physical exercise restores brain insulin sensitivity and may protect against type 2 diabetes. Now, it doesn't cost you anything to be physically active. And if this will help you with insulin production and sensitivity and all of that, I feel I should wake up every morning and see half of Nigerians walking to their offices. Everybody should have a mini gym at home. You should go and buy yourself a treadmill. I don't know how much it will cost, but I think every Nigerian should have a treadmill at home. even if it is 30
Richard,
minutes
you're going
of
to sponsor that the way you say with so much excitement.
it's because I'm like, I'll put it as I'm a workout enthusiast. Like, I love seeing people work out myself. I always try to work out. I do that every morning if I have the time. And then hearing this, just let me use the word ginger. It excites me to want to work out the more. Like, and I feel it won't cost you anything more. Gone are the days we feel that you have to pay a gym membership for you to be fit. Gone are the days you have to feel it's expensive to work out. No, you just need to go to a second-hand place, get yourself a very nice, comfortable workout shoes that won't cost you more than 3,000 naira. Just get comfortable trousers and shirt, and make sure every day you work for even 1 hour, 30 minutes, and just do that, because we can see the benefits here. It will help with type 2 diabetes. It helps lower the risks of type 2 diabetes because of what it does. So I'm excited to see that exercise can help us. So what will it take for us to be able to help ourselves as citizens of Nigeria? You can see that it will cost you nothing to avoid type 2 diabetes.
Yeah, you know, Rachel, just to add up to what you've said, yes, exercise is very important, and we cannot overemphasize the need of exercising. And just like you said, it will cost you anything. Of course, if you cannot, you can just walk. When you close from work, why don't you just walk to at least some, you know, bearable distance, some measurable distance before, rather than always hopping on a car. But then I also have to look at the fact that, looking at the number, over 10 million Nigerians are living with diabetes. And you begin to ask questions, how did we get to that point? Is it that enough sanitization was not done? Is it that we've not been having awareness? And I know that this awareness only occurs once in every year. That is when we are celebrating the World Diabetes Day, like today. But then, in as much as, definitely when you go to urban areas especially, you see most of the, you know, members, NGOs, bodies coming together to raise the awareness on what you need to do, because we can see some of the conditions, kidney failure, heart, and even it can even reach to the point where you lose an arm or even a little, you know, a foot or a leg. But then we need to know that for those living in the rural areas, how much awareness are they, you know, have we taken down to the right areas? How many of them can actually know that we even have diabetes type A, and we have B, or 1, or we have 2? You know, I think this is the time where, rather than just going to the radios, TV stations, and then making it once in a year thing, this is something that should be done regularly. I know of loved ones. I have lost someone very dear to me to diabetes, and this is because most times we believe that because we are Africans, we are Nigerians, and then when you feel a little syndrome, you just feel that, okay, this is just a headache, this is just something. Take lots of water. Yes, we know that water is very, very important, because you need to flush down some of the sugar that our livers, you know, store and then accumulate, and also your kidney, because we know this are little by little you realize that you begin to have kidney failure. I know what it means. You don't even have the money to start going for dialysis, and also it's just a very complicated situation. And so I believe that we shouldn't just limit this to once in a year. This is something that I believe NGOs can come together. Just like you say, we have just 150 endocrinologists for over 220, and more doctors are leaving. If you go to some of these centers, most of it is only private hospitals you can get access to it. Our public hospitals, very few. You can, so you could see that we have a lot to do. We need to, so this is where I'm hoping that the incoming president should be talking about, what can I do through the health sector to increase more of these centers, rather than sitting down and backlashing other people that will not, you know, do anything to our country. So we look forward to seeing that more centers will be made, more people will be aware of what diabetes is all about, how you can be at risk of it, because we know it's even a communicable disease. So these are things that more and more awareness should be raised, so people can know how they can avoid it. And even if you are living with diabetes, how can you live longer? How can you treat yourself? Some of the food you are meant to eat, and all of this. And some of this food are very cheap. These are vegetables that you can get vegetable of 15 naira if you are living in Jos, possibly, you know. Thank God for places like Plateau State, they have these vegetables And even if you're living outside, these are things that can cost you so much. So I hope and I look forward to more awareness being taken down to the grassroots level, because they need that much more than those in the urban area.
And of course, when you said it's communicable, is also you can be born with it, is hereditary. I think that's one of the sad part about diabetes, that you don't even really have to live an unhealthy life for you to wake up with diabetes. Some people are born with it and they just have to survive their whole life feeding themselves, like injecting themselves with insulin and all of that. But still yet, it just proves the point that there's a need for more awareness on this. Like, people need to know that, okay, you can be born with it. It can be hereditary, just like cancer and all of that. And then how do you manage it? How do you go about it? And if you so happen to be lucky that you're not born with this thing and you don't have it in your family, it doesn't mean you cannot have it. So what do you do to prevent yourself from becoming diabetic and all of that? So yes, there's so much that needs to be done. Not only we should stop stopping at the urban areas and go to the rural areas in Nigeria. Sure. Still on the Guardian newspaper, still on petrol scarcity, marketers accuse NIMASA NPA of dollarizing transaction. Sori Adebayo Sani Umeadi takes turn at Arise TV Town Hall, set 2023 agenda, and you can read that on page 6. And there is a weekly security review, and if you want to know more of that, get the Guardian newspaper for yourself. And that's all the news on the Guardian.
On the Daily Sun newspaper, Nigerians victims of failed government coming from the Labour Party. The big story, Ayu's fate hangs at Atiku and the G5 governors negotiate. The writer following that said PDP chair may be sacrificed for peace to reign. You can read more of that story on page 6 of the Daily Sun. On 2023, Nigerians may elect kidnappers if care is not taken, criminologists warn. Well, I think this is something we need to be very careful. Well, you can read more of that too inside the paper. Troops clear camp, rebel attack neutralize 2 terrorists in Kaduna. And for COVID-19, we have 93.5 million doses of vaccine administered to 65.5 million eligible Nigerians. And this is to say, for those who are yet to take their shots for the COVID, to enable to do that, because it's actually very free. So you can do that. That does not mean that because we have relaxed some of these things, but they are still with us. Still on the Daily Sun newspaper, leave Ozodinma alone to do his good work, Bishop Amatu tells detractors. Well, you can find that on page 35. And we have PDP in Labour Party attack the APC over allegation of sponsoring fake news against Tinubu. The outside of the paper, we have Nigerian Navy can end piracy in West Africa. This is coming from the Spanish ambassador. You can read more of that on page 29. The picture story here, we can see is Governor Hope Ozodinma of Imo State, his wife Choma, the deputy, and we have the Nigerian Guild of Editors, Mustafa Isa, at the banquet for editors in Owerri at the weekend. And that's all on the Daily Sun newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, Buhari Oshomole Obi to open projects in Rivers. Senate panel queries NEITI over 960 million naira for 43 officials. Gates Foundation votes $1.4 billion for agric in Nigeria and others. My surgery experience by Vice President Osibanjo. You can read that on page 8. After collecting 3 million naira ransom, bandits demand 10 million naira to release victim's body. And this is a very sad one, and you can read more of that on page 5. And the big story on the Nation newspaper, Tinubu remains a solid, reliable candidate. This is coming from the APC. Fake news won't help opposition. Candidate to engage Nigerians in diaspora. We shall no longer allow the prevailing recklessness and utter disregard for professional judgment to continue unchallenged. And you can continue with that story on the front page and page 4 of the Nation newspaper. Wike orders not keen on truce with Atiku, Bauchi governor in Delima. And you can continue with that story too on page 6. Food shortage, forex crisis push up inflation, and you can find that story too on page 5. And on the downside of the Nation newspaper, Lagos chief of state loses wife. May God comfort the family. Democrats retain control of U.S. Senate. That story can be found on page 27, and that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
Before we move further to other papers, right at this moment, we'd like to take a break so that we can let you, choose some of the stories and drop your comment or your contribution on any of the story that you feel is actually very, very interesting and also very dear to your heart. Do not go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, it's still the Dailies on Echo Television International. We've been looking at various stories that have been trending on the papers, the issue of hate speech coming from the two main parties, and also we look at the fact that it's World Diabetes Day and how you can keep yourself healthy, and also the fact that over 10 million Nigerians are living with it. So we'd love you to drop your comment on our official Facebook or YouTube pages so that we can know what you feel about it and the way forward, recommendations on how we can be better as a nation. I'm still your host, Sarah Elisha Dasham, and my co-host is Rachel Tanze. Thank you, Rachel, for doing this.
You're welcome, Sarah.
All right, let's move further to the newspaper review, and I'll be taking the Voice of Liberty. On 2023, bring INEC offices attackers to justice, Sarah urges Buhari, and we look forward to the justice on that. Still on 2023, PRP presidential candidate Abiola present manifesto, rules out alliance with any party. And from Kaduna, we have 4 killed as terrorists attack location housing Nigerian soldiers. Still on security, sovereignty of our nation must not be threatened. This is coming from General Irabo. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Irabo, has reiterated that the sovereignty of the nation must not be threatened under any circumstances. And I believe that they will sweep into action to make sure that we have a secure nation by all means. And on fake news, TV station apologizes to Tinubu over false reports. 2023 campaigns hate speech impose severe punishment on politicians. This is coming from the ACF charging INEC. And on security breaches, we have the civil society false routine disregard of the DSS intelligence by other agency. Downside of the paper is a report and where we can see on flooding, 25 million Nigerians risk severe hunger in 2023, even though last week we saw where the president said there will be no food crisis, but then we can see that over 25 million Nigerians will risk to be hungry in 2023. So we look forward to seeing the measures we saw in the paper where the Gates Foundation have allocated a huge amount of money to the agri sector. So we hope that every of that money that have been directed to that sector, every penny should go into that sector, so that we need to have food as much as possible. We saw where one of the presidential candidates said that he will return Benue to be the food basket of the nation. Yes. We look forward to seeing that every state that have the potential to actually produce more food to actually protect us from the food crisis come 2023, all will be done. So we look forward to seeing that, and that's all on the Voice of Liberty.
On the Daily Independent, we are committed towards protecting unbanked, undeserved. This is coming from CBN concerning currency redesign. ACF wants politicians not to overheat the polity, and you can read that on page 4. And the big story on Daily Independent, dollar sell-off temporary, be wary in coming weeks. This is coming from analysts, and the writer says alleged behind-the-scene intervention by CBN. Editors and conference in Owerri score Uzodinma's administration high. The writer says, leave Uzodinma to do his good works, Bishop Amatu tells detractors, and you can read that on page 7. Wanted drug baron arrested as NDLEA naps woman linked to Pakistani cocaine syndicate. Attacks on INEC offices, Serap asks Buhari to arrest perpetrators. Buhari condemns bomb attack in Turkey, returns after UK medical trip, and you can read that on page 6. Still on the Daily Independent, PDP mulls action against INEC to knock Tinubu out of presidential race. Tinubu will contest, win 2023 presidential poll, APC confidently telling PDP, and you can continue with that on page 29. And on the downside of the paper, probe circulation of forged INEC document, Tinubu tells the police, and you can read that on page 27. And there is a picture story with our president, and if you want to know what that was all about, get the Daily Independent for yourself. And that's all the news on Daily Independent.
And then we look at the Abuja Inquirer newspaper, where we have Abuja light rain, positive phone heat resumption of operations. You can read that story on page 3 of the Abuja Inquirer. Other stories here we have is the Lokogoma flooding, FCT unblock road diversion to hurry the dry season. That also you can find inside the paper. And we have civil society organization kick as education minister cancel sex education in schools, and you can find more of that on page 8. FCDA stalls $31.6 million new ECOWAS headquarters in Abuja. The big story, which is on the ground red, we have Asokoro Maitama property owners own 3.1 billion naira. The writer says FCTA issues 2,979 demand notice. Downside of the paper, we have why LEA teachers pension store. This is coming from the FCTA board, and I hope you read more because it's important. We see why local government area school teachers pension is not coming forth. So for those who are interested, you can read that story on page 11. The picture story is a rounding up of the political landscape, credible elections, and the role of editors to give credible results. And that's all on the Inquirer.
On the Business Day newspaper, Naira gains 26.24% in 1 week despite external reserve decline. Salary growth in Nigeria drops to 21-month low. And the big story, Atiku Kwankwaso Tinubu differ on jobs for youth. You can continue with that on page 2. Dollar demand surge on new Naira hits small businesses. Tech storm sweeps over 100,000 jobs in 2023. And that's all the news on Business Day.
A New Telegraph newspaper, we have startup Lagos takes 70% lion's share of the $1.7 billion. The writer says a state generates $1 billion from data centers. Coming from CBN Bank's asset rise to 19.13% to 66.76 trillion naira in 1 year. And then on the Naira redesign, Apex Bank throws the branches open for public inquiry. You can read that on page 4 and 5. And on flooding, Bayelsa official closes IDP camps. Natural disaster, Sultan seek God's intervention. And we can also do something to actually avert some of the disaster, the global warming, some of our activities actually, creating that. So we can also contribute to adverting all of that. And we have other stories still on the New Telegraph that said Nigerian Airways liquidization, huge error. And on the 2023 campaign, Arewa Consultation Forum raises the alarm over hate speech violence. Autumn 1 again destruction of campaign materials in Benue. APC mismanaged, destroy Nigerian diversity in 7 years, coming from Atiku. And then we have Atiku and Obi sponsoring fake news against Tinubu, coming from the campaign committee of the APC. Why Obi's statistic is unsettling opposition. So you can read all of the stories on page 2, 4, 8, and 26. Lack of funds threatening planned resumption of the Abuja Metro train services. And on the presidential town hall debate, we have Sowore Yabaji Adebayo on full agenda on security, planned consultation, constitutional reform, state police says regional outfit not situation, not the solution. So you can read all of that on page 5. And we have some award that shall be going to some special persons, so do well to check which of them you want. Downside, we have I think a study coming from Obasanjo, and he said lack of education responsible for the early death of diabetic patients. And I think that's not far-fetched from what we said earlier on the awareness, because when you are ignorant of something, you definitely fall a victim to it.
True.
So more awareness and education need to go round on diabetes, and that's all on the New Telegraph newspaper.
On this day newspaper, CBN moves to protect unbanked vulnerable in rural communities. The writer says banking public response to policy positive. Attacks on INEC offices threat to 2023 election, says Obi Media Office. $460,000 for future. PDP consider legal actions to stop Tinubu, says Section 137 of Constitution makes APC candidate ineligible. Insists presidential hopeful must address nation on allegation. Go to court, ex-Lagos governor is unstoppable. Ruling party fires back. Let's unite to recover our country, Atiku urges Nigerians. The big story on this day at Arise Presidential Town Hall Series, the second, candidates harp on economy security. The writer says, I will ensure new constitution is evolved. This is coming from Sowore. Adebayo is saying wrong security architecture responsible for our woes. And Sani is saying rule of law antidote to economic poverty. And Umadi is saying my commitment to state police sacrosanct. And you can continue with that on page 6. And there is a picture story, let there be peace in Okija. And that's all the news on this day newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the national economy. We have currency buying setting inflation rate of 2022 and 2021. And then we have some of the commodity prices. And the US dollars, you can see you can buy it at 421 Naira, set at 422 Naira. That was in July. And then we can see differences for 2022 and 2021. For those who are interested in the Forex, you can actually check how you can exchange the dollar, the Naira, and the differences from 2021 to 2022. The big story that's screaming on the national economy is seeing mass exodus of Nigerian professionals. Who's gained? This is a question. And I think this is a question for everybody, not just the government, Richard. It's a question to you. It's a question to I on who is gaining out of this, because as we're having more exodus, definitely people are exiting.
Yeah.
We talk about Japa, like it's been on the most of the papers. People are leaving the shores of Nigeria. And the moment you leave, it seems as if the atmosphere outside Nigeria is conducive for you. You begin to see that you are blossoming, and then people begin to ask, what is the problem? So I believe that this is a question that each and every one, we should not just be in a rush to give answers to, but it's something we need to sit back and say, what can we do to avoid this? Because we are losing lots of brains outside to other nations, not just doctors. We're having architects leaving the country. We're having professional, other people talking about lawyers, talking about, just name them, various, people that live in the shores of Nigeria. That will actually leave Nigeria to be drained of some brains. So I hope that we look inward and see what we can do about more people that are leaving the shores of Nigeria.
Like Sarah, this question has a very direct answer. Who's gain? We're obviously not gaining from it.
True.
So obviously someone else is gaining from it. And the perfect example is if we are having one doctor to 10,000 patients in Nigeria, then who is gaining? We're obviously not the ones gaining. The people over there having more medical staff in their emergency, in their trauma, in whatever department, are the ones gaining. Whatever country we are moving to, are the ones gaining. This is black and blue. There's no dragging about it and saying, we are gaining in some place. No. If Nigerians are living, these are young, able people going. It's not old people that are leaving this country. It's very young people. So if the young future of tomorrow are living, then who is the tomorrow of Nigeria? So at this moment, we are not gaining. Obviously, whoever these people are japping to their country are the ones gaining, and it's obviously not us, because it's already telling on us. We are seeing how understaffed our medical sector is. We are seeing how we are having half-baked engineers and buildings always collapsing. It's as a result of not having the qualified people doing the job, because the qualified ones are leaving and we are leaving the unqualified ones behind. Because for you to be employed abroad, you have to be very good. They don't just pack you because they want to pack you. No. People that are leaving are very qualified because they do have a high standard there. So for you to be able to leave the shores of this Nigeria as a professional or in any field, you are very qualified. So it's the very qualified people that are leaving, and we are left with, sorry, no offense, but obviously we are left with our building collapsing. It's enough for us to tell us that we are left with unqualified people. It's not rocket science, and I'm not accusing anybody wrongly, but whatever, we are having results that our buildings are collapsing. We are having results of doctors not doing their job well in the offices, either because they are understaffed or because we are left with the ones that are unqualified. So it's very glaring that we are not gaining anything from this. But whoever our people are going to their countries are the one gaining at the moment.
And we need to do something.
We need to do something
stop
about
more
it.
Of these
Yes.
people, more of Nigerians leaving the country. Other stories still on national economy. We have Nigerian manufacturers, big headaches. You can read that on page 5. Bank charges, what you need to know about bank charges for those of us that are always in the bank complaining about some unnecessary charges. You need to go and know more about that on page 15. And then how mop up will strengthen the Naira coming from Emefiele, the CBN governor. You can read that too on page 4. Downside, we have still on the COP27 that is going on and Nigeria's ambitious energy transition pathway. So if you want to know more about what is in store for Nigerians, you can check that story on page 19 of the national economy. That's all on the national economy.
On the Punch newspaper, starting with the big story, domestic airlines ask court to terminate federal government Ethiopian deal. The writer says Air Peace, Asman Airlines seeks withdrawal of Nigerian air license. AGF Malami, Ethiopian Airlines, Sirika Nigerians air listed as defendants. Still on the Punch newspaper, rising inflation drives consumption spending to 57 trillion naira. COVID-19 orphaned 371,100 Nigerian children. This is a report. CBN releases $3.5 billion for foreign education under Buhari. Why Nigeria made top cholera cases worldwide again. This is coming from the Director General of NCDC. And you can find that story on page 3. Still on the Punch newspaper, there is a picture story of the presidential candidates Lamba's federal government for corruption and insecurity in the Arise town hall debate, and you can read that on page 12. Another downside of the paper, flood affected 3.2 million Nigerians, 1.4 million displaced. This is a report from the United Nations. Missing Bees woman found killed by Lagos one chance robbers, and you can read that on page 6. And I'd like to say we need to have more security tips in this country. I know it's important, like there can't be too much emphasis on personal security. I need to know what to do if I'm faced with challenges. I mean, I know things are becoming more difficult, and it's like you're learning this new one and the criminals are devising new means, and you find that it's like no matter how you keep updating your knowledge on how to be how to maintain self-security, you're left backward. Because I know that there are people who have been able to escape this kind of one-chance robbers and they live to testify about it. There are people who are able to escape scammers. There are people who are able to escape being kidnapped and all of that. So I would appreciate where tips, security tips, self-defense, what to do that can like things to check out for and look at that can maybe save you or help you save another person, because it's really sad. This kind of news is really sad. And the fact that you know that you can be that person. Anybody can be a victim of one child's kidnappers. If you're lucky, they just rob you and you go. But the worst case scenario is you dying, and that's your life ending. Yes, you don't live to say anything. There's nothing you can do about that. So I just hope that there is more forums where people are being taught self-defense, where people are being taught how to know what to look out for, most especially when you're moving alone or you so happen to be stranded at night and you need to get back home because one thing or another happened and you find that his past time is late. The normal taxi that I do follow are no longer available, like how in Jos Plateau by 6 you can't have the keke napep and you have to rely on taxi drivers, and we don't know whether they are licensed, we don't know if they're criminals or not. So what are those things that I'm to watch out for as an individual, knowing that, you know what, I might be going home late, I might be alone and I need to get back home? What are those things that I need to watch out that might help me, that can even help me help another person in a worst situation?
You know, there was a time I think was it the Federal Road Safety here in Plateau State gave out some tips. They said for every keke, whatever taxi you see, they are being numbered, because we've checked them. They have the plate number. It's different from the numbers that are on the keke napeps, and then that's the tricycles. And then you can actually, when you snap it and send it to them, for every name is attached to a number. And I think this was a tip that even general manager of the station here gave. He said, whenever you're about going home, whether it's a keke or a taxi, simply while you're walking, you stop here. Simply just take your phone. That is where your Android phone should come handy. It's all about taking selfies. You snap the numbers of this thing, send it to a friend, and then when you are home, you say, I'm home. You can now delete it. I think that to some extent is a tip that can actually help us to some extent to actually avoid all these one chance drivers, keke napep, because sometimes the keke might even be stolen from the real owner. So through that, be able to trace where the owner kept the keke or kept the taxi or the bike, and then they'll be able to, you know, a fast way of tracking. I think these are one tips that we can actually, you know, always have it handy. Even though to some extent, I know I'm guilty sometimes, I forget to do that. But I think to some extent that's actually helped lots of our loved ones that I know. So simply while walking, snap it, send it to a friend. If they did not see you after 1 hour, they'll be able to.
They will
report it immediately, and then you'll be able to trace whoever is the owner. So I think these are tips that we can always have.
And we can't overemphasize it. So let's keep telling our younger ones, let's keep telling our friends, if you're going out, this is what you need to do. There's no too much of security talk. You need to be safe.
Of course.
And the last story on the Punch newspaper, Celestial Church sacks guard, apologizes for attacking Punchman. You can read that on page 5, and that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
All right, let me round up the session with the Vanguard newspaper. We have an Electoral Act 2022 subsection 2 still on the issue of the 2023 election, coming from the INEC chairman. He said, how breach of pre-election practice direction threatened the 2023 election. So you can read that column on page 14 of the Vanguard newspaper. Other stories here, we have why Nigeria must partner private sector for education development, coming from the Vice President Osinbajo. And we have other story here, media roundtable on industry regulation holds in Lagos today. So for those who are there, you can do well to attend that and know more about what is happening on the media. The big story here says Tinubu, Atiku, Obi, Pika over fake news and hate speech. And we have sponsoring fake news against me won't help, Atiku, Obi. This is coming from Tinubu. Tinubu trying to avoid scrutiny over the USD $460,000. This is coming from the AP and the PDP presidential candidate Atiku. Look within for fake INEC statement on Tinubu, the Labour Party tells the APC. Shetima's insult on Obi breach peace accord, coming from the Labour Party campaign. Catholic bishops seek issue, says Governor Autumn apology over anti-Fulani's comment a relief. My statistic on settling opposition, coming from Obi. We have on consumer loans. Banks' consumer loans decline 17% as CBN tightens money supply. Interest rate threatened higher. customers are now resisting loans. This is coming from bankers. And you can read more about the issue of the loan interest rate and all of that inside the Vanguard newspaper. On 2023 budget threatening as crude oil output drops to 7.4% to 1.37 million barrels per day. That you can find on page 8. And on currency redesign, we will protect Nigerians without bank accounts, coming from the CBN. Doctors, migration not peculiar to Nigeria, coming from the federal government. I think that should not be to make us feel better, but that should make us look how we can generate revenue from our doctors living. Because I know of a country that for every doctor that leaves, there's a revenue that comes back to the country for the doctors being there. So I think we should go to that level. Not saying that it's not just peculiar. Yes, of course, it's not peculiar, but we have to avoid that as much as possible. Still on the Vanguard newspaper, oil marketers seek end to dollar-dominating port charges. That you can find on page 8. And we have gunmen kill ex-Benue Polytechnic deputy rector, local government information officer. This is really sad. We hope that those behind will be brought to book. The last story here, Kaduna bandit demand 10 million naira to release victims' corpse. That you can find on page 6. Wow, that's sad. After demanding for 3 million, now 10 million. Well, if someone was saying that if he was the one, hold the corpse, we can use the 10 million naira to treat family members, but we never can tell the pain all of this is involved, and that is why we need to have all the security tips, whether for you as an individual or even for the nation. And that's all on the Vanguard newspaper, and that is how far we can go on the program this morning. Thank you so much to all our viewers. Thank you to all the crew members that made this program a success. Thank you, Rachel, for doing this always with me. And remember, as we celebrate the World Diabetes Day, you can do something to help someone close to you, and always make sure to take good care of yourself. Until we come your way again, stay tuned to other lineup of programs.